The night of the long sales, Shoalhaven City Council meeting 28 and 29 July 2026. So, after months locked out of its own chamber by asbestos contamination, Shoalhaven Council finally came home on Tuesday night. New carpet, new seating, new lighting, and the mayor said the refurbishment would last 50 years. Most definitely, it's going to last longer than the mayor. Then in the space of 4 hours, a 7-vote majority, the old standard SIG block, set about making sure a long list of communities' own assets won't be around for that 50 years. Today we're going to talk about what was put up for sale, who was spared, who got heard, and a twist at the end of the day that means none of it's actually settled just yet. So let me start with the big one. What did you make of it? Watching that chamber fill up for the first time in months, Marie, what was your view of and coming back into their newly refurbished chamber and what they did in it?
It's lovely to see all the new decor and the new carpet and somewhat better lighting and sound for the videoing. But what that certainly opened it up to is really hearing some diabolical type behaviour on the night about a topic that is very close to a lot of people's hearts. And it was just horrifying. I've been involved in and watched a number of council meetings, but that one was quite the shocker. And the outcome was even more disappointing.
Okay. So the land sales, by a single vote, 7-6, council adopted CL 26157, one bundled resolution putting roughly 20 parcels of community land and operational land on the path to reclassification, rezoning and sale. And listen to what's on the list. The Nowra Youth Centre on Kinghorn Street, the premises housing safe shelter, Shoalhaven's bed for homeless people, the purpose-built Children's Services Unit at Green Street, Ulladulla, that's Noah's, has run for 20 years, a charity that's run for 20 years. The old RFS station at Bendalong, that's a community group trying to be revived, and the unformed road at Depot Beach. Land, this council has already twice formally resolved not to sell, so they've come back a third time. The community's got 4 days' notice. Some tenants found out at 5 o'clock on Thursday before the meeting. So the meeting was on Tuesday. At least one learnt about what was going on from watching the TV news. So does that look like consultation to you?
That's not consultation. It's not consultation, but more importantly, it's a total disrespect for the community that they're supposed to serve, that some of these councils, let's not lump them all together, but that's not serving the community. A community being served is certainly serving all residents, even those that are the most disadvantaged. And taking away these community assets, of all the assets to choose, each one of these provides a service and assistance to probably the most underprivileged in the community. There are plenty of other assets to look at. Why do they automatically look at community assets that don't bring any money whilst throwing money at events and tourism? There is no balance here. It's disgraceful.
That's right. And I mean, I think the thing from an ex-police background is when you don't have youth centres and people supporting youth, you know who they next see. It's the police. So you're going to have more than likely an increase in crime, increase in police activity, courts and the justice system. So it's just crazy.
This devaluing of a certain group of people, they tend to see that tourism and businesses are offering more and providing more to the council than community groups, again, to which they're supposed to serve. Denying, as you've just said, the assistance and help to let these people live normal and satisfying lives and be a part of their communities. Instead, the council wants to isolate them, leave them with no support or people there to hold out the hand of help when they need it most. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, punching down on the most vulnerable people in the community for tourism that costs us money, doesn't bring us money. It does bring business money. So if it's the business and council, the old 1950s, 1860s behaviour, of a council there to represent the rich. That's exactly.
You and I understand there's a balance in that. We're not saying that the council should be totally reliant on ratepayers' funds and no other form of revenue, but balancing up that revenue with the expenditure, where it goes, and this sugar hit of selling everything off all at once, it's gone. And if it's to make your bottom end look good, what are you measuring your capacity and your delivery on? It's certainly not on taking care of your community.
So here's why I think this is happening now. Council's own bottom line has been propped up by timing. An $8.1 million advance grant payment turned what would have been a $0.36 million deficit into a headline deficit of $1.24 million. Another $13 million advance landed this June. 4 out of 5 state sustainability ratios were failing at the last published assessment. So land sales are the third leg of the stool. And as one council put it on the night, the sale money, quote, does not address any structural deficit going forward. It's a one-off hit to the budget bottom line, and you cannot sell it again. You can sell the youth centre exactly once. Am I being unfair?
Yeah, look, this council's not an island. When they get into fiscal difficulty and they look for assets to sell, they always go to what they call non-performing assets. These assets are considered to be non-performing. They probably are also high on the maintenance costs, keeping these buildings running, paying the electricity bills, doing all those things that apply to council. So they certainly look at removing those assets, and then they'll tell the rest of the community or the rest of the residents, this is a great cost-saving measure because it means we're not putting extra money in here and here. Each one of those properties, those facilities should have been considered and discussed in isolation, and it should have come to a business paper in an isolated fashion. Bundling them up was absolutely diabolical.
Now, the mechanics, Councillor Christolalis moved that the sites be considered one by one, as you've just said. That's the logical way to do it. And that was defeated 7 votes to 6. Who by?
Again.
SIG. So again, the block. A Depot Beach resident, Peter Ireland, told the Chamber this quote, not apple for apple items, but more of a fruit salad of different circumstances bundled into a questionable piece of council procedure to bypass critical analysis. Now, that was a pretty accurate description. Why would you bundle a homeless shelter, a youth centre and a beach road into one vote unless you didn't want them examined separately?
Clearly you do that if there's some benefit to developers out there. Let's get real about what this is about. We understand there's a push to identify land to build on for affordable housing and social housing, and it's going to start this way. But developers are rubbing their hands together. There's no doubt that all of these are key sites for a developer to build potentially high-rise on or multiple. So there's more money coming down the drain pipe. That is what these particular locations are for. And we need to make that very clear that, yes, there's a bit of a push by New South Wales government in planning. Minister Scully is keen to get the councils to look at unusable land or land that's been locked due to rezoning. But that should not just automatically transfer over to bundling up community assets. It's more about looking for greenfield land, looking for land that's laying fallow. Maybe it's land banked for 5 years with zombie DAs. It's about those.
That's exactly my thought. And if you look at the approvals here in the Shoalhaven, there's good DA approvals and land sales and whatever, but it's not translating into building. And why isn't it translating into building? There's not the money. It's better to hang on to the land, whether it be 5 years or whatever else. At the moment, the cost of building supplies, all the other pressures, the falling housing market. It's a very complicated issue, housing. You say, we want cheaper houses. Well, when you want cheaper houses, they won't build. It's not a good position. And think about Depot Beach on its own. Council resolved not to sell it in June 2025. A recession attempt failed in July 2025 where they tried to turn it over and sell it again. A council officer wrote to residents in August 25 confirming it was excluded from the land sales strategy. So we won't be putting this on a strategy. 12 months later, it's back inside a bundle childcare facility. Now, they couldn't even get that right. And we talk about investment there. I know that on the night, the representative of NOAA's spoke about them recently spending $200,000 in a Commonwealth grant. NOAA's is a registered charity. Council itself chose that site back in 2001, and NOAA's bought more than $230,000 of Commonwealth money to build it. So Council replaced the wrong page the day before the meeting. The CEO apologised. We got it wrong, he said. And I suppose credit to him for it's the first time I've heard him say he's got something wrong. But the vote went ahead on the original timetable.
I think so much of that, out of probably everything that enraged me at that meeting watching it, was the Noah's charity and the way that was handled and the way that the mayor particularly just swatted it off. The errors in that, totally disregarding the impact on that business and all of their planning and all of the impact again on the people who use that facility. None of that was even thought about. It was just like, too bad, so sad. Again, how is that caring for your community? She's one of these people, along with a few others, who go out there and say, I've been in the community, I work for the community, I'm devoted to the community. Can you please tell me how doing what they did to Noah's on the other night is in any way, shape or form being part and caring about your community?
And the mayor constantly talks about the history of the city. I've been on council since 2012. I know everybody. I've been everywhere. And yet you get this most basic error about a well-regarded charity just flow through into the business papers. One site was pulled out of the bundle and deferred. The car park at 77 Princess Street, Berry, deferred until the Berry Hotel development application is decided. Sailed through with only 3 votes against. And who asked for this? The Berry Forum. This is a hot nest of Mayor White and SIG supporters, whose secretary opened his deputation by identifying himself as also an independent member of the, quote, independent member of the finance review panel that was appointed by Mayor White en bloc, not going to the public to call for positions. Now, let me be clear and fair here. Mr. Coughlin, who was the person concerned, declared his dual role openly. Nothing suggested he did anything improper. Any resident can make a deputation, and the Berry case was reasonable on its merits. But that's not the issue, is it, Marie? What's the issue here that you see?
The issue here is about balance. And as you say, take the 2 communities you're talking about and take as you've said, we're not declaring anybody's necessarily done anything wrong here. We're just asking people to have a look at the facilities that were bundled up together and then this one extricated. And of course, we accept that Coughlin declared his role openly. We understand that he thinks it's all above board and to all intents and purposes, mechanically or operationally, that may be the case. But how does it look? How does it look when you're shutting down the others and that sailed through and this one has a hiccup and gets pulled back? And we immediately go Berry. It's Berry. It's a pretty ritzy area, let's be honest. And, it's not downtown Shoalhaven. So I think there's a real concern. It comes back to how does it look to the residents overall? And I think you're going to have to say it may not be improper. Anybody can make a deputation to the council, but on balance with those others, it makes no sense.
So the issue is the comparison the council has created themselves inside a single hour. A car park in Berry deferred almost unanimously, with the CEO volunteering that the sale proceeds should flow back into Berry's own parking. Meanwhile, a disability services centre, a homeless shelter, a youth centre and a twice protected land at Depot Beach refused the identical courtesy, 7 votes to 6. One councillor said it plainly on the night. It's difficult to stand here and defend a car park when Noah's, the homeless shelter and the childcare all being completely left within this group.
That speaks immediately, whether we like it or not, to it's not what you know, it's who you know. And when you have, I'm saying, look at me, I'm looking objectively at this, right, because I don't know the players. So I'm watching something play out on a screen at a council meeting and I'm thinking to myself, what? So that would be a lot of other people too. They would be looking at it and going, but why? Why did that happen? Who knows who? And we all think like that. We go, they must have known someone to be able to have let that happen. And you can't help that question. Of course, you're going to ask that question. Who has more merit than someone else? And why does someone get treated differently? Yeah. And who gets access would be the other thing. Who gets access to the people that matter that make these decisions?
So let's talk about the community wellbeing grants, because I think this one flew under the radar a bit. These grants are assessed by an independent panel deliberately at arm's length from the council, so no one can be swayed. But on Tuesday, Councillor Steele moved on the floor of council with no notice to either organisation to strip a panel recommended grant of $4,230 from Treading Lightly, a very well-known organisation here in the town, particularly in Ulladulla. The volunteer environment hub in Milton, Ulladulla, that was born out of the Black Summer fires, and hand that money to the crippling Plovers, the All Abilities Rugby Club from Vincentia. It passed 8 votes to 5. Now, the Plovers are, by every account, a thoroughly worthy club.
There's a lot of things wrong first. Both of those organisations needed to be treated fairly and both be judged on their merit separately. The problem is when you arrive at a council meeting with a limited amount of information about either of those organisations, and you're having to, on the spot, base your decision to fund or defund something, you shouldn't be doing it without a clear cost-benefit analysis, if you like. What do both of these organisations deliver? What makes one a better choice than the other? And a full explanation about what it is and why the council is choosing one preference over the other. And I didn't see any of that. It just didn't. There was a few speeches that made no sense to me, but it didn't really articulate at any time in any of those debates, if you can call it a debate, about why one should have been considered over the other, why one should have its funding withdrawn and the other one be funded.
I'm a bit closer to this because I complained last year of a similar process where all the work's done supposedly hands off by the staff, and we heard the mayor say how disrespectful it is to staff when you overturn their decision. You're disrespecting their professionalism, blah, blah, blah. But here it was, just voted this one through. And who holds a grudge like, I don't know, like somebody who works at the front bar of the Marlin, it's treating lightly because of its sort of green connotations. It's there about the environment, about saving trees, saving animals, recycling, do whatever else. You've also then got in Vincentia more sort of football-y stuff with Bob Proudfoot, so you could see how that sort of tickles up Bob Proudfoot about what a great thing this is for the kids of the northern wards. So the panel was overridden in both directions in a single motion. A group the panel assessed and recommended was defunded. A group the panel assessed declined because the application was unclear in its finances, and the panel wanted staff to help them reapply was funded. So the whole selection criteria process effectively means nothing.
So immediately it undermines the work of the panel and it undermines the decisions that they're making. And because there's your councillors have a hands-off, we had a different approach. We had councillors who represented in those grant funding type meetings. But if you're making councillors have a hands-off approach and as I said before, all they're getting is a decision and there's a recommendation made and then something on the floor is changed and the recommendations are seen as worthless, then why are you bothering to meet? You might as well just choose. The councillors might just choose where the money's going and say that's it. And it's also clearly a political thing because you want money to go to a particular ward if you want a particular vote on something else. This is the trade-off. This is what is this one going to give me if I give them this?
And signalling, and I think as we spoke, in one of our previous sessions, without disrespecting the staff, I suspect psychologically the staff are already factoring in what they know about the councils and the ruling bloc and how they sign it. Now, I wrote to an open letter to the council on this very subject saying, looking at how it was inconsistent. Internally, the logic was inconsistent. I didn't think the recommendations made much sense, but still, that's what went up. The councillors didn't pick up those issues, but we've just then had SIG going, oh, no, we don't like those greenies. We'll give it to Bob's footballers up there. It would look sweet. So it was just another example of how these things work. So Councillor Killian spoke on this, and her words, we shouldn't be changing it from the floor of council, and I think it reflects badly on all of us. Stand by decency in the process. And that's what was lost. So what was lost in that was the decency of the process, where you can just come in and overturn it.
But the biggest problem there is I don't think people quite understand, unless you apply for a grant, how involved it actually is. So there's a bit of paperwork sitting behind it. You have to justify it. You have to do all of that sort of stuff. And so you're committed to that. You've put the effort in. And you're assuming that you are going to be assessed along with the other people who put in their applications. And technically, some people get a lot of assistance with putting in these applications, which repeat organisations getting funding. And then you have some newer groups who have no idea about how the process works, get no assistance whatsoever, and then get immediately overlooked. So the process is flawed from the outset. There should always be a grants person available to assist people complete the paperwork and tell them what's expected in order to hope to get success. But if any of these people are now watching what happened on the floor, they're going to go, why am I going to put effort into an application when it's just going to be rejected or turned over or it doesn't suit the group of councillors on the date? That's just heartbreaking for communities out there.
3 more items from Tuesday night that I'd argue they're all in the same shape. One, conference delegates. The mayor announced her 3 picks, despite Councillor Boyd having nominated by email a week earlier. Now, I'd say this, I've seen this pattern. It seems to be a mother hen gathering up her chicks for these things. She always seems to take Councillor Clancy. And I know from discussions with Councillor Clancy keeps talking about building up a resume. She's not a young woman. She's not an old woman, but she's not a young woman. I don't know what she's building up a resume for. Could be for state politics. I'm not sure. But she always gets picked up. And Councillor Kemp. Now, as we know, that the mayor's strongest supporters are Kazmiri, Kemp and Clancy. She likes to keep them close. So the majority bloc, after this was put on notice or challenged, they decided they'd have a vote about who'd go. So the majority bloc then voted 7-6, 3 consecutive times to elect exactly the 3 councillors the mayor had originally named. 2, the finance panel appointments. And I've got an article coming out about this. Mr. Baptiste, the man who was selected, Order of Australia Medal, very highly regarded man. But him and the mayor are like this. He served on council with her, voted together with over 90% consistency with each other. So councillors asked to discuss the candidates in confidential session. The only lawful way to actually debate individual applications refused, 7-6. Then they were told they couldn't discuss the candidate in open session either, which is probably appropriate because you're talking about potentially defaming people or being rude. So the appointments passed with councillors saying on the record that a standout candidate with decades of local government experience had been passed over and they weren't permitted to know or say why. Why did that happen? Why did one get up over the other? So 3, the mayor told councillors that pulling sites out one at a time would be, quote, taking over from the staff's professional advice. Now, this is the same mayor that alleged that she'd been deliberately misled over the dogs on beaches. She's thrown staff under the bus on a number of occasions. So barely an hour later, she spoke and voted to refuse the child care development application in Douglas Street that staff had spent a year assessing and formally recommended for approval. So now, play devil's advocate for me. Isn't this just majority politics? Block win votes? Is that democracy?
It's the worst kind. It's the same, was the same for us at Shoalhaven. We were always outnumbered and the mayor always had the casting vote. It's a joke to suggest independence here. If you're voting all together, you're voting in a block. And Labor have often obviously been criticised for this kind of behaviour. And I think as we spoke about before about caucusing with our, and that's just not true. Yeah. You're not allowed to caucus on anything other than the deputy mayor. But the fact is they are operating like a quasi-caucus and they're operating as a block. And I think the conference delegates is always, throughout all councils, is a demonstration of block voting. Because there's a group of people that all like to hang out together. They like to drive down together and save cash. They share a room. They go to the dinners together. They hang out together and they probably spend a bit of time shopping in the local area, which is what I found, rather than them actually going to sessions. The conferences I went to were actually attending sessions and speaking if the opportunity came up. I loved being the person elected to vote. These appointments concern me greatly. It's a bit like the planning panels that are very important. When a group of people make a decision about who sits on a panel that is making decisions, very big fiscal decisions or very big planning decisions, and it's a very controlled group and a very controlled selection, that doesn't augur well at the other end for what the outcomes are going to look like. It seems to me there's a lot of lacking in balance when decisions are made. You see the decisions come out the other end and you go, how did they come to that conclusion? And why wasn't this and this considered? And again, we're seeing a lot of this behaviour in this kind of block voting. And going back to your staff advice contradiction, again, we're seeing the idea of the block voting treating a situation and the staff are going into it thinking they're psychologically across the way that a decision's going to turn out, and then it turns on its head. And psychologically, that's quite damaging to the staff, as you said, put in a year's worth of work, and then it goes up puff of smoke with not a real explanation to it. It's very poor form.
Can I say there on the court thing on the Douglas Street case, they've set themselves up for have their bottom kicked in the Land and Environment Court because the council staff have worked through all the legitimate objections. The objections they were raising, they were valid if you're living there. It's an imposing building, but they're not things that prevent in the Land and Environment Court the thing being won. So my view is it will be built, and again, the ratepayer will pick up the tab, which is one of Kazmiri's great lines about he doesn't want to get beaten in the Land and Environment Court. Mate, hang on to your hat, because I think you're going to get your little bottom smacked in the Land and Environment Court. So the night ends with the restless gallery, and the meeting is adjourned to 9:30 on Wednesday morning when, as Councillor Norris predicted, working residents can't attend and the gallery will be empty, which it pretty much was. By 6 votes to 5, Council carried CL 26160, the policy rewrite that deletes the existing blanket guarantee of public comment before Council disposes of land and downgrades it to, quote, consideration.
I've witnessed this kind of behaviour, but it's just not understanding the patch or, do they realise what they're sitting on here? These are council assets. Council assets mean ratepayers' assets. They're residents' assets. And just going, I'm just going to change the consideration. I'm just going to change how it's like changing the zoning. The zoning changes are vitally important to a community. If you have something that's been allocated as operational land and then suddenly you go, oh, no, I'm going to change it and it's going to be called RU2 country. It changes the whole dynamic, the costs associated, the money you're receiving, what it's going to be used for. The rigour in these decisions is missing, along with the decision to have it at 9:30 in the morning was clearly unfair and pushing some people out they knew were going to vote against it.
And it was the two-headed issue as well, where you had Councillor Wilkins, who's famous for talking about character and how nobody knew what character was and whatever else. But here he is when he's talking about the childcare centre, was concerned about the character of the neighbourhood. So they say one thing on one day and one thing the next. Now, we saw exactly as you say, the changing of the time. The mayor trying to somehow indicate that the state was forcing her to do this. She could have moved it to the evening or done whatever else. And the only one who didn't appear to be, even Wilkins got up and said, yeah, that sounds a bit rough. Let's do it tomorrow afternoon or tomorrow evening. And then Councillor Kemp was going, oh, I'm busy. I think there was a darts competition at the pub she had to attend. So they took it to the morning, a deliberate, and then in the morning, and I've written off to the CEO and to Safe Work about the mayor's behaviour. It was an appalling evening.
It was terrible.
And her line about, I've got all day, I'm here, I can inconvenience you as much as I want. It was just a complete and utter disgrace.
It's utter disrespect. I think that's the worst thing. It's disrespectful. You hold a seat of power. You hold a seat of influence. People, sad as it is, will look up to you and your behaviour. You're supposed to be a leader. Where was the leader in any of that performance? Where was the leadership in treating the other councillors with the disrespect about them having to work, or a mother maybe having responsibilities for children, dropping them off, going to an event, childcare, whatever?
As we recall in the conversation with Matthew Norris and how he spoke about how he tries to contain himself out of the respect for the office of mayor, which was an extremely good thing, where she clearly shows no respect for the councillors, apart from shepherding some of her lame ducks. It's a terrible situation. So then came the twist at the end of that meeting. So before the close, the CEO announced 2 recession notices, each signed by Councillors Killian, Norris and Boyd, one against the public comment policy, one against the entire land sale package with a replacement motion sending the community sites to genuine consultation, item by item. And here's the legal effect. Because it matters under Section 372 of the Local Government Act, when notice is given at the same meeting, neither decision can be carried into effect until the rescission motions are dealt with at the next ordinary meeting. That's automatic, no vote needed. So they've got a month, really. All these community groups now at least have a month to get themselves motivated and organised and get themselves heard again before councillors.
The point, though, isn't it, Steve? Everything's on hold, and it means the community are watching. You are getting engagement. I'm seeing it on Facebook, and it means that those organisations might be better supported this time where they weren't supported before. It's hard going it alone. You're trying to manage. You're managing with volunteers and sometimes really poor resources, and you're holding it together with chewing gum and a Band-Aid. And if they feel there's people rallying around them, then they can articulate what their issues are and people can say, yeah, fight. And that might be in the chamber with placards. I don't know. But they certainly need support. Some groups are better at rounding up the troops, so to speak. The troops can be rallied easily. But these other groups it's harder for them. It's just literally harder to get their hearts. Their hearts are in their work and getting shit done in the community, and they haven't got time for all this other stuff going on. So it's unlike a bridge club or a tennis club or one of those sorts of places.
It was good to see that. I haven't yet heard what Liza Butler's doing, but certainly Fiona Phillips has jumped in, trying to talk with Minister Honig, because a lot of this does require, or some of it requires, ministerial approval to reclassify and sell some of these assets. So that's good. I mean, so we'll just have to see how that pans.
I think I made that exact comment today on one of the things where someone said, "Oh, council has to balance the books," and I said, they're in a predicament for a particular reason, and my feeling is that they're in a fiscal difficulty because they've built big flash entertainment centres, or they've had fireworks that have cost too much money, or they're running tourist things that aren't bringing a return to the council. They certainly might be bringing good returns to businesses that are on the fringes of these events, but it's not actually bringing money back to council. And as a consequence, starting to look for trimming the fat, so to speak, and then trimming the fat is trimming community facilities. It's trimming staff that work out in those community facilities. Instead of saying, why don't you trim a few of those tourism events or your fireworks or some other show you're putting on that the money's going to a park or to an entertainment centre.
Or as we heard from Gillian, if you get an electric vehicle, the costs are a lot cheaper. Mayor, you don't have to claim $500,000 over since 2012, putting it in your pocket for travel allowances. So it's not good. And whether the mayor takes up the standing invitation to answer those questions to us, is she prepared to come and face the people in a on the record discussion? She's been invited, I think, formally twice, but I've also through emails to her separately told her at any time I'd be happy to talk to her on the record. My takeaway is that I keep coming back. You can dress a balance sheet up with an advance grant once a year. You can sell the youth centre exactly once. It's a one-off hit, sugar hit.
As I said to you before, these decisions, which are made on the fly because fiscally a council is struggling, then it is a one-off sugar hit. You can't sell it twice. Once it's gone, and then the next time round when you're fiscally being irresponsible, you've got to go looking for the next sugar hits. And often these aren't replaced. These services aren't replaced. They don't end up replacing a homeless. They end up going out of the area, out of the region. And if they go out of the region, they don't get any state funding or federal funding anymore either. So you lose a pivotal service in a time, homelessness service. We're seeing more people park their cars next to a creek or their caravan or their whatever it is, and they're living out of it. And so you want to cancel homelessness services? They don't get replaced. And then where is the funding? That means Fiona Phillips has to round up some funding for homelessness services, and there's not one locally. So it's got to start again.
You can't. Just as another issue or a service for our readers and our watchers, I've published today a free resource about, I think it's about 40 pages on how to engage with council, how things work and some other bits and pieces. So that'll be on the Facebook page and on Substack and available here, and you can feel free to share it with whoever you want. It's a very socialist approach. I'm not really interested in making money. Any money we do make goes to our tools and to the GIPRA things. So, Marie, really over to you to wrap up and say farewell.
Let me just say in closing, residents need to think about what they want their councils to do, what they want their councils to be. And if they feel comfortable with the land bundling or these asset decisions, really, you might not need homeless service now. You might not need any of the other services now, but you might know someone who does need or uses these services or may in the future. So when you're thinking about this, please consider whether you feel personally that this is a good decision by your council. Who are they punishing? Who are they rewarding? And why is that occurring right now? So that's the biggest thing for me. We need people to care about other people. We need to unify against these decisions. Action is the only thing that helps the people much less, the more disadvantaged to us.
And I think we do know that the highest emerging number of homeless people are either middle-aged or older-aged females. So homelessness can come to you very quickly. You just need one or two knocks and to find yourself on the street. So thank you very much. And
that's all the goods from the gallery you're going to get today.
Okay.
Ciao.
Thank you. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, and we'll catch you soon. Next week, maybe. Okay.